Kids running down the hallway at Jefferson High quickly hid their phones when they spotted Coach Mason Brooks. But it was too late. He'd seen everything. The mocking videos, the Terminator teacher edits, the thousands of likes on degrading comments. Principal Anderson called him in. "Mason, we're getting complaints from parents. Maybe a desk job would be more suitable for your situation." Coach Brooks looked out the window at the gymnasium. 3 years ago, 7 kids had been left for dead in there. And he had made a choice. His leg or those children? By the end of this story, you'll understand that sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear prosthetic legs. If watching Mason endure public humiliation hits you as hard as it hits me, take a moment to like and subscribe. It genuinely helps more people discover these stories of hidden strength. Now, back to Mason, who's about to face an escalating nightmare at Jefferson High. The morning had started like any other Wednesday at Jefferson High School in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Mason Brooks, 34 years old, with close-cropped brown hair starting to show hints of gray, arrived at 6:47 a.m. The parking lot was nearly empty except for the janitor's van and Mrs. Henderson's ancient Volvo. She was always early, grading papers in her classroom before the chaos began. Mason grabbed his gym bag from the passenger seat of his Ford pickup. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of cut grass from the football field. His prosthetic leg, a state-of-the-art carbon fiber model that had cost more than his truck, made its characteristic soft click with each step across the asphalt. He'd grown used to the sound. It was part of him now, had been for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. The gymnasium's side entrance required a key card. Mason swiped his, heard the familiar beep, and pushed through. Inside, the smell of floor wax and old basketballs welcomed him like an old friend. This was his sanctuary, or at least it used to be. Before the videos, before the memes, before Robocop became his unofficial nickname among the 400 students who walked these halls. He set up the equipment for first period. Dodgeballs in the storage bin, cones marking the boundaries, the sound system ready for warm-up music, everything precise, everything in its place. Control was important when so much else in life felt uncontrollable. The first students started trickling in around 7:35, mostly juniors, 16 and 17 years old, full of that particular brand of teenage confidence that teetered between charming and cruel. Mason recognized the dynamic immediately. Tyler Martinez, the unofficial leader with his leather jacket and effortless swagger. His girlfriend, Madison, blonde and sharp-tongued, always ready with a cutting remark, disguised as a joke. Derek Chen, the class clown who'd do anything for a laugh. And Sarah, quiet Sarah Mitchell, who sat in the bleachers pretending to be invisible. "Yo, Coach!" Tyler called out, his voice carrying across the gym. "My phone died. Can I charge it on your leg?" The group erupted in laughter. Madison was already filming. Mason had heard worse, much worse. He'd developed a thick skin over the past 2 years of teaching here. But today, something felt different. The mockery had an edge to it, a performative cruelty amplified by the presence of cameras. "Phones away, Martinez," Mason said evenly. "We're doing relay races today." "Aw, man, can you even keep up?" Derek chimed in, and more laughter rippled through the growing crowd of students. Mason divided them into teams, ignoring the whispers and poorly concealed snickers. His prosthetic leg functioned perfectly for demonstrations. He could run, though not at full speed. He could demonstrate proper form, pivot movements, all the fundamentals of physical education. But to these kids, he was spectacle first, teacher second. The relay races went as expected. Tyler's team won, showboating the entire time. Madison's team complained about unfair advantages. Derek's team couldn't stop making robotic sound effects every time Mason walked past. And Sarah's team, predictably, came in last because nobody really cared about winning except when bragging rights were involved. As the period ended and students filtered out toward their next classes, Mason overheard Madison talking to her friends. "I swear, it's like they hired a disabled person just to check some diversity box. How's he supposed to teach PE when he can barely walk?" The words stung more than Mason wanted to admit. He'd heard variations of this sentiment from students, parents, even a few faculty members who thought they were being subtle. But it never got easier. Between first and second period, Mason retreated to his small office adjacent to the gym. It wasn't much. Just a desk, a filing cabinet, and a wall of certifications nobody ever looked at. Bachelor's in Physical Education from Iowa State. Master's in Sports Science. CPR certified. First aid certified. And buried in the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet, wrapped in a plastic sleeve to protect it from moisture and time, a newspaper clipping from 3 years ago. He never looked at it. Didn't need to. Every word was burned into his memory. Second period was freshman PE, and freshmen were generally easier. They were still too intimidated by high school to be openly cruel. They whispered, "Sure," but they followed instructions and mostly kept their mockery to themselves. Third period was his planning period. Mason typically used this time to prep for afternoon classes or grade participation sheets. But today, his phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged him in a TikTok video. Against his better judgment, he opened it. The video had 47,000 views and climbing. It was a compilation of clips, all filmed at Jefferson High. Mason walking across the gym, the sound of his prosthetic amplified for comedic effect. Mason demonstrating a jumping jack, the video slowed down and set to the Terminator theme. Mason reaching for a basketball, overlaid with sound effects from Robocop. The caption read, "When your school hires a cyborg to teach PE, Robocop teacher can't make this up." The comments were worse. "Bro, how is this legal? My tax dollars paying for this? No way this man teaching kids. Jefferson High, Wilden." There were supportive comments too, people defending him, calling out the ableism. But those were drowned out by the mockery, the jokes, the casual cruelty of internet anonymity. Mason closed the app. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from the prosthetic, that worked fine. This was pure stress response, adrenaline flooding his system with nowhere to go. A knock on his office door made him look up. Principal Anderson stood there, her expression carefully neutral in that way administrators had when delivering bad news. "Mason, do you have a minute?" He did. What choice did he have? Principal Anderson, late 50s, with steel-gray hair and reading glasses perpetually perched on her nose, closed the door behind her and sat in the chair across from his desk. She'd been principal at Jefferson High for 12 years, had seen 3 superintendents come and go, and generally ran a tight ship. Mason respected her, but he also knew she was risk-averse, always calculating how decisions would play in the court of public opinion. "I've been getting calls," she started, her voice measured. "Parents, school board members. They've seen the videos." "I'm aware of the videos," Mason said quietly. "Some parents are concerned about whether you're able to adequately fulfill your duties as a PE teacher." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Mason felt his jaw tighten. "My performance reviews have been excellent," he said. "Student fitness metrics are up 15% since I started. Injury rates are down. I meet or exceed every benchmark." "I know that, Mason, and personally, I think you're doing a fine job. But optics matter. The school board is asking questions. There's talk of reassignment." "Reassignment to what?" Anderson shifted uncomfortably. "There's an opening in study hall supervision. Or possibly the library. Something less physical. Less physical. Code for where people won't see your disability as much." "I'm a PE teacher," Mason said, and he heard his voice rise slightly despite his efforts to stay calm. "I have a master's degree in sports science. I've spent a decade in this field. You want to put me in a library because some kids make fun of me on TikTok?" "It's not just TikTok, Mason. its parents questioning judgment, board members worried about liability, and, honestly, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Some staff members have expressed concerns about whether having you in such a visible position sends the right message about our standards. The right message about our standards. There it was. The real concern wasn't about his teaching ability. It was about image, about what it looked like to have a disabled teacher in such a physical role. "I need to think about it," Mason finally said, though there was nothing to think about. He wasn't going to take a demotion, wasn't going to hide away in a library because his existence made people uncomfortable. "Take the rest of the week," Anderson said, standing. "But Mason, the board meets Monday. They're going to make a decision with or without your input." After she left, Mason sat in his office staring at the wall. The certifications, the degrees, the years of education and training, all of it apparently meaningless when weighed against public perception and viral videos. His phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another video had been posted, this one with even more views. He didn't open it. Lunch period at Jefferson High was controlled chaos. 800 students packed into a cafeteria designed for 600, noise levels reaching concert volume decibels, the smell of industrial pizza and teenage hormones thick in the air. Teachers on lunch duty rotated weekly, and this week was Mason's turn. He positioned himself near the vending machines, a strategic spot that let him monitor multiple areas without having to patrol constantly. His leg ached today, not from pain exactly, but from the phantom sensations that sometimes plagued him. His brain still expected signals from nerves that no longer existed, creating an eerie sense of presence where there was only carbon fiber and titanium. Tyler and his crew had claimed their usual table near the windows. Mason could see them even from across the cafeteria, a tight cluster of letter jackets and designer backpacks, phones constantly out. The social hierarchy of Jefferson High made visible. Madison was holding court, her phone propped up against a water bottle as she filmed something, probably another TikTok, another piece of content mined from the daily drama of high school life. Mason tried not to think about how many of those videos featured him. Coach Brooks? A quiet voice beside him. Sarah Mitchell, the girl from first period who always seemed to be trying to disappear. She held her lunch tray awkwardly, as if unsure whether approaching him had been a mistake. "Yeah, Sarah? I just wanted to say, those videos are really messed up. Tyler and Madison, they're—" She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "It's fine," Mason said, which was a lie. But what else could he say? "It's not fine. My mom's a physical therapist. She works with amputees all the time. She says what you do is really impressive, teaching PE with a prosthetic. She says most people couldn't handle it." Something in Mason's chest loosened slightly. "Tell your mom I said thanks." Sarah nodded and hurried away before anyone could see her talking to him. Mason understood. Aligning yourself with the target of mockery was social suicide in high school. The fact that she'd taken the risk at all meant something. The rest of lunch period passed without incident, but as students filed out toward fifth period, Mason overheard a conversation that made his blood run cold. Two sophomore boys, walking past, one saying to the other, "Dude, I heard they're gonna fire the robot teacher. My dad's on the school board and he said it's basically decided." Mason's hands clenched into fists. So it was already decided. Anderson's meeting hadn't been a discussion. It had been a courtesy notification. Professional courtesy, before they demoted or dismissed him entirely. Fifth period was senior PE, and seniors were the worst. They had senioritis, that particular combination of arrogance and apathy that came from being months away from graduation. They did the bare minimum, challenged every instruction, and treated PE class like an extension of their social hour. Today's lesson was basketball fundamentals, dribbling drills, passing exercises, free throw practice. Simple enough that Mason could demonstrate most of it. Complex enough to keep them engaged if they bothered to try. They didn't bother to try Tyler was in this class. 2, he'd somehow convinced his counselor to let him take PE twice for easy credits, and he immediately started organizing his own game, ignoring Mason's instructions entirely. Half the class gravitated toward him, leaving Mason with a handful of students who actually wanted to learn. Martinez, "We're doing drills right now, not scrimmage. Come on. Coach, it's more fun this way." "I don't care if it's fun. I care that you're learning proper technique." Tyler dribbled the ball in a lazy circle around Mason. "Yo, can you even play basketball with that leg? Like for real?" The class went quiet, waiting for Mason's response. This was the moment Tyler wanted, the confrontation he could film and post and turn into content. "I can teach you basketball," Mason said evenly. "Whether you want to learn is up to you." "That's not what I asked. I asked if you can play." Mason felt the eyes of 30 students on him. Tyler was smirking, confident, already composing the caption for whatever video was about to happen. "Free throw contest," Mason said suddenly. "You and me. Best of 5, Tyler's smirk widened. "You serious?" "Dead serious. You win. I let you scrimmage for the rest of class. I win. You run drills like everyone else." The class erupted in excited chatter. This was better than anyone had hoped for. Drama and competition rolled into one. Tyler shrugged, all casual confidence. "Your funeral, coach." They moved to the free throw line. Someone's phone was definitely recording. Probably multiple phones. Mason didn't care anymore. He was tired of backing down, tired of taking the high road, tired of being professional in the face of constant disrespect. Tyler went first. His form was sloppy but effective, the product of years of driveway basketball and natural athleticism. The ball arced through the air and swished through the net. Nothing but net. The class cheered. Mason stepped up to the line. His prosthetic leg didn't affect his shooting form. Basketball was mostly upper body anyway. But the psychological pressure was immense. Miss this shot, and he'd never hear the end of it. He bounced the ball 3 times, muscle memory from years of playing before the accident. Bent his knees. Released. Swish. Tyler's second shot. Made. Mason's second shot. Made. By the 4th shot, the class had gone quiet. This wasn't the blowout they'd expected. Tyler, for the first time, looked slightly concerned. Tyler's 4th shot hit the rim, bounced twice, and fell through. Made, but barely. Mason's 4th shot. Swish again. The 5th and final shot. If Mason made this, they were tied and would need a tiebreaker. Tyler stepped up, and for the first time, his hands showed the slightest tremor. The pressure was getting to him. He shot. The ball hit the back of the rim and bounced out. The gym erupted in chaos. Some students cheering, some shocked. Tyler's crew already shouting about distractions and unfair conditions. Tyler's face had gone red with humiliation. The tables suddenly turned. Mason stepped up for his final shot. Make it, and he won. Miss it, and they tied, heading to overtime. He didn't let himself think. Just shot. Nothing but net. The gymnasium exploded with noise, but Mason didn't celebrate. He simply turned to Tyler and said, "Drills! Now!" For the rest of the period, they ran drills. Tyler was sullen and silent, his crew muttering mutinously, but they followed instructions. And when the bell rang and students filed out, Mason heard someone say, "Yo, coach can actually ball." It was a small victory, but it felt hollow, because in a few days, the school board was going to meet and decide his future, and no amount of free throws would change their minds. That evening, Mason sat in his small apartment on the outskirts of Cedar Falls, staring at his laptop screen. The video from the free throw contest was already circulating. "Teacher with prosthetic leg destroys cocky student," read one headline. "Robocop coach shows up class bully," read another. The comments were more supportive than usual, people celebrating the underdog victory. But Mason knew this wouldn't change anything. Viral moments didn't translate into job security. His phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he hadn't seen in 2 years. Riverside Regional Hospital. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Mason Brooks?" "Yes, Mr. Brooks. This is Jennifer Walsh from Riverside Regional. I'm a social worker here. I'm calling because, well, we have a situation and your name came up in our records." Mason's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "Tell them thank you," Mason managed to say. "Tell them I'm glad they're doing well." "Coach," Sarah said quietly. "We want to help. The school board meeting Monday. Can we come?" "It's a public meeting. Anyone can attend." "Then we'll be there." The weekend passed in a blur. Mason spent Saturday writing and rewriting his speech for the board, spent Sunday questioning whether he was making a mistake, whether speaking up would just make things worse. Monday arrived with all the inevitability of a train wreck. Mason taught his classes on autopilot, barely registering the students or activities. His mind was on the evening, on the 10 minutes that would determine his future. At 6:45 p.m., he arrived at the school board meeting in the district administration building. The boardroom was designed for maybe 50 people, but tonight it was packed. Mason saw parents he recognized, teachers from Jefferson, and, to his surprise, a cluster of teenagers sitting in the back row. Sarah, Aisha, Marcus, and at least a dozen others. Students who'd come to support him. The board meeting began with routine business, budget approvals, policy reviews, the mundane machinery of educational administration. Mason barely heard any of it, his prepared speech running on repeat in his mind. Finally, Principal Anderson approached the microphone. Item 7 on tonight's agenda. Personnel reassignment proposal for Mason Brooks, physical education teacher at Jefferson High School. The board has received concerns regarding Mr. Brooks's ability to adequately fulfill his teaching duties due to physical limitations. Mr. Brooks has requested an opportunity to address the board. Mason stood, his prosthetic leg suddenly feeling heavier than usual. He walked to the microphone at the front of the room, aware of dozens of eyes on him. "Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "My name is Mason Brooks. I've been teaching PE at Jefferson High for 2 years. Before that, I taught at Lincoln Middle School for 6 years. I have a bachelor's degree in physical education from Iowa State and a master's degree in sports science. I'm CPR certified, first aid certified, and I've received excellent performance reviews every year I've taught." He paused, looking at the board members, 5 people who would decide his fate, their expressions carefully neutral. "I know why I'm here tonight. There are videos circulating on social media. Students mocking my prosthetic leg, calling me Robocop, questioning whether I can adequately teach physical education. And some parents have called to complain, saying my presence is inappropriate, that it sends the wrong message about standards." One of the board members, a man in his 60s named Harold Sterling, shifted uncomfortably. "I want to address why I have this prosthetic leg. I've avoided talking about it because I didn't want to be defined by one event, but I realize now that silence has allowed people to create their own narratives." Mason pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. The newspaper article from 3 years ago, yellowed and creased. December 15th, 3 years ago. There was a fire at Jefferson High School, faulty electrical wiring in the old gymnasium. 16 students were at basketball practice. I was supervising. The room had gone completely silent. Even the board members were leaning forward now. The fire spread faster than anyone anticipated. Exit routes were cut off. 7 students became trapped in the gym with no way out. I got them into the equipment room and sent them through a maintenance crawl space. 6 made it out quickly. The 7th, a freshman named Noah Patterson, was too scared to move. When part of the roof collapsed, I physically pushed him into the crawl space. A beam fell and pinned my leg. Mason's voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. By the time firefighters reached me, the damage to my leg was catastrophic. Eventually, it had to be amputated. But those 7 kids lived. They all lived. He looked directly at Harold Sterling, the board member who'd been most vocal about reassigning him. Mr. Sterling, your daughter Rachel was one of those 7. She went through that crawl space second. She's playing college basketball now. I saved your daughter's life, and now you want to fire me because students make fun of how I walk. Harold Sterling's face had gone white as death. Around the room, people were crying. The cluster of students in the back row were on their feet. Sarah Mitchell stepped forward to the microphone. I'm a junior at Jefferson. Coach Brooks is the best teacher I've ever had. Not despite his prosthetic leg, but because of everything it represents. He shows up every single day and teaches us that physical limitations don't define capability. Aisha spoke next. My sister was in that fire. She has nightmares about it to this day. But she's alive because Coach Brooks chose to save her instead of saving himself. One by one, students stepped up to speak. Then parents of the kids who'd been saved, sharing tearful gratitude. Teachers who'd worked with Mason, praising his dedication and skill. By the time they finished, the boardroom was emotionally raw, the air thick with tears and revelation. The board chair, a woman named Patricia Chen, finally spoke. Mr. Brooks, on behalf of this board, I want to apologize. We should have known. We should have remembered. Your sacrifice saved children in this community, and we responded by questioning your worth. She looked at the other board members, who were nodding in agreement, some wiping their eyes. There will be no reassignment. You will continue teaching at Jefferson High with our full support. Furthermore, we will be implementing new policies against bullying and discrimination based on physical ability. And Mr. Brooks, thank you. Thank you for your service to this community and for reminding us what true dedication looks like. The room erupted in applause. Mason stood at the microphone, overwhelmed, as students and parents approached to shake his hand, to thank him, to apologize. Tyler Martinez was there, his head down, shame written across his face. Coach, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I was a complete jerk, and I'm so sorry. Madison was crying. We should have asked. We should have cared enough to ask. The following week at Jefferson High was different. The videos making fun of Mason disappeared from TikTok, replaced by videos telling his story. Students who'd never acknowledged him started saying hello in the hallways. The mockery stopped. In his first period PE class, Tyler approached him before the lesson began. Coach, I was wondering if you could teach me that free throw form. The way you shoot. I want to learn from you, Mason nodded. Sure, Tyler. I'd be happy to. As the class began their warm-ups, Mason looked around the gymnasium. The new gym, rebuilt after the fire, state-of-the-art and safe. He thought about the 7 kids who'd gone on to live full lives. Thought about Emma Rodriguez recovering in the hospital. Thought about how close he'd come to losing this job, this purpose. Sarah Mitchell approached him during a water break. Coach, thank you for telling your story. A lot of us needed to hear it. Thank you for standing up for me when it mattered. That afternoon, a package arrived at Mason's office. Inside was a framed newspaper article about the fire, along with a note. Coach Brooks, you taught me that heroes don't need capes. They just need courage and a heart willing to sacrifice for others. Thank you for teaching me the most important lesson of my life. Noah Patterson. Mason hung the frame on his wall, next to his certifications and degrees. Not to brag, not to seek praise, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the hardest battles are fought not with weapons, but with presence. With showing up every day despite pain, despite mockery, despite a world that often mistakes appearance for capability. 3 months later, Jefferson High held an assembly. The superintendent presented Mason with the district's Medal of Valor, the first time it had been awarded in 15 years. Students gave a standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. Tyler and Madison approached the microphone together. We started a petition, Tyler said. his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. Every student at Jefferson High signed it. We're proposing that the gymnasium be officially renamed the Mason Brooks Athletic Center, Madison continued, her voice shaking with emotion. Because we want everyone who comes to this school to know what real strength looks like. And we want to make sure that what happened to Coach Brooks, the bullying, the mockery, never happens to anyone else again. The proposal passed unanimously. By the end of the school year, a bronze plaque was installed at the gymnasium entrance. Mason Brooks Athletic Center. In recognition of extraordinary courage and selfless sacrifice, December 15, 2020. 7 lives saved Mason stood before that plaque on the last day of school. Students streaming past him towards summer vacation. Some stopped to thank him. Others just smiled and waved. But the mockery was gone, replaced by something far more valuable. Respect earned through truth. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma Rodriguez. Just got accepted to nursing school. Going to help people the way you helped me. Thank you for everything, Coach. Mason smiled, typing back a quick congratulations. Then he turned and walked back into the gym, his prosthetic leg clicking its familiar rhythm against the polished floor. There was a summer basketball camp starting next week. 20 kids signed up, eager to learn from the coach who'd proven that limitations were just challenges waiting to be overcome. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear prosthetic legs. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to give up, refuse to hide, and refuse to let other people's cruelty define your worth. Mason Brooks had learned that lesson in fire and pain. Now he spent every day teaching it to others. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. They mocked his prosthetic leg at school until 7 parents stood up and said, "He saved our kids." Students called him Robocop. Then the principal revealed why he lost his leg. Mason Brooks wasn't just a PE teacher at Jefferson High. He was the teacher with the prosthetic leg, the one students called Robocop, the one featured in mocking TikTok videos. Parents were complaining. The school board was considering firing him. But nobody knew that 3 years ago, in that very gymnasium, he had saved 7 children from certain death. While they were trapped in a fire, he sacrificed his own leg, getting them out one by one. And now, those kids he saved were in college, playing basketball, studying engineering, but nobody knew the truth. When Emma Rodriguez was rushed to the hospital after a car accident, all she wanted was to talk to Coach Brooks. "You need to tell them," she said through tears. "They need to know what you did." This is a story about how silence can be misunderstood, how respect must be earned through truth, and what real heroism actually looks like. Tyler and Madison, the bullies, broke down when they learned the truth. The school board meeting revelation changed the entire community. If you've ever made a sacrifice nobody knew about, or if you've ever judged someone by their appearance only to learn you were completely wrong, this story is for you. What would you do if you discovered the person you mocked was actually a hero? Comment below.